Today's show, one UFC champion explains why Conor McGregor's potential fight against Floyd Mayweather will be his last. And Alexander Ovechkin is ousted before the conference finals yet again. What other current superstars are the biggest playoff busts? But we begin with soccer. The Champions League final is set. It'll be Juventus facing defending champion Real Madrid. SI senior soccer writer Grant Wahl here to break down all of this action. Real is going for its third Champions League title in 4 years. Juventus is trying to win its third title ever. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Grant?
I am really excited about this matchup, actually, because I think it's almost 50-50 on who could win this, because Juventus has been that good during the Champions League and in Italy this season. They destroyed Barcelona, didn't give up a goal over 180 minutes, cruised against Monaco. And Real Madrid is Real Madrid.
Sure.
You know, they're fantastic. This is their third final in 4 years, as you said. And I think there's some motivation on Real Madrid's part. They aren't quite viewed to be as good as Pep Guardiola's Barcelona was when he was there. For whatever reason, maybe it's because of the style they play, but if you keep winning these trophies year after year, you've got to be in the conversation.
Yeah, you think our LeBron James, Michael Jordan debates are it's stiff over here in this country. You should see some soccer debates. Of course, Cristiano Ronaldo will be on the verge of winning his fourth Champions League title. Now, the comparisons with Messi, we're talking about comparisons, they continue. What would another Champions League title do to that debate? Would it put it to bed?
I don't know if it would put it to bed. I mean, part of the thing is it's not just winning the trophies, it's how you play in getting them. And with Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi, yes, if Ronaldo gets to 4 Champions Leagues, Messi's got 3, so then there's a debate point right there. However, it's kind of like the debate on who's the best player in the world. You know, every other year it seems like Messi and Ronaldo trade World Player of the Year awards, but if you ask me and most fans out there, I think they would say that Lionel Messi is the best player in the world just because of how he goes about his business. That doesn't mean Ronaldo's bad. He's been fantastic. He's reinvented himself as a center forward, scored a ton of goals in Champions League. Personally, I don't think there's a huge debate over who's the best player in the world, but I like the fact that Ronaldo keeps winning trophies.
Resume against resume, you'd have to hand it to Ronaldo?
If you're just basing it on trophies, I guess you would say Ronaldo, especially if he can win this Champions League. He's the European champion with Portugal as well. At the same time, I do feel that, personally, I'm more of a Messi guy.
Okay. Of course, Juventus has been here many times before. This will be their 9th appearance in the Champions League final. They've lost each of their last 4 finals. So what's the feeling? Is it urgency? Is it extra pressure?
For me, that sort of urgency is personified in Gigi Buffon, their 39-year-old goalkeeper. He's one of my favorite players in the world just because of how passionate he is about the way he plays the game, how he represents his teams, Italy and Juventus. And he's still very, very good. Yeah. This may be his last chance to win a Champions League. He never has before. And I think it's Juventus' best chance to win a Champions League since they last won it in '96. So they've got a lot of weapons right now. They're not just a defensive team, though they're fantastic defensively. And I think they've got a real chance against Real Madrid.
Okay, you said you think this is 50-50 in this final, but ultimately, who
if you're going to make
win?
me pick,
I'm going to press you.
I'm gonna lean toward Real Madrid just because I think in the end the firepower is there all over the field. I think Real Madrid has shown, in Spain, in Europe, I think they're the best team in the world right now. But I think Juventus has, like I said, a very good chance here. But if I've got to pick, I'm going to lean toward Real Madrid.
Okay, we're excited to watch that final. Very interesting. Soccer fans will remember this day in 2012. It's the day that Manchester City won the English Premier League for the first time in 40 years. They had to do it by coming back against QPR in the final minutes of the match. It was incredibly dramatic. Now, you went back, you talked to people who were involved. What did you learn about that crazy day?
Just an amazing day with City scoring 2 goals in stoppage time, which they needed to score 2. To beat out Man United, the crosstown rival, for the Premier League championship. After 10 months of playing, the last kick of the season basically decided it. It's the greatest day in Premier League history. And so I went back to Manchester, spoke to people who were involved, both players, people who were covering things that day journalistically, and a few things stood out to me. Vincent Kompany is one of the best interviews, I think, one of the smartest guys in world soccer, in addition to being a tremendous player. And he talked to me about how this day is unlike any day in his life. He's like, I will never recover that feeling again, no matter what I do, when Sergio Aguero scored the winning goal in the 94th minute of that game. Aguero obviously looks back on this as the greatest day of his career, to be able to come up big when they needed 2 goals in stoppage time. And to talk to fans there as well of Manchester City after all of the horrible years when they didn't win anything, to win it in that manner when they thought it was going to be the worst day of their lives, literally is what they said, when they were down 2-1 in that game, and to actually win it in that manner against their rival Manchester United. I had guys tell me, like, look, this is like your wedding day when your first kid is born, that type of thing. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, 5 years later probably feels like yesterday for a lot of these fans and those involved. Grant Wahl, really appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure. To say the Washington Capitals took an L on Wednesday night would be an understatement. Shut out in Game 7 on their home ice and booed out of the arena. The Capitals and their once-in-a-generation star Alexander Ovechkin had their season end where it has the last 3 years and 6 in Ovi's career, in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That got us thinking about which other active superstars never have made their conference final, at the very least. 5th on the list is Mike Trout. While he's only played in 1 playoff series, it was a dud. The 2-time AL MVP went 1 for 12 with 1 RBI. It was a solo home run, and the Angels were swept by the Kansas City Royals. 4th is J.J. Watt. While injuries limited him to 3 games in 2016, the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year has fallen short of postseason expectations. The worst, a 30-0 shutout by the Chiefs in 2015. 3rd is Bryce Harper. Despite just being 24 years old, the 2015 NL MVP has lost all 3 of his NLDS series, including a pair of elimination games at home. 2nd is Chris Paul. The 9-time All-Star and future Hall of Famer took a brutal loss to the Rockets when LA was leading 3-1 in 2014-2015. In fact, Paul's LA and New Orleans Hornets teams are the only ones in the Western Conference to not make a conference final since Paul entered the league in 2005. But number 1 belongs to Alexander Ovechkin. In his 12 years in the league, Ovechkin has made the playoffs 9 times without sniffing the conference final. In fact, he's played in 9 Game 7s in his career, losing 6 of them. While you can't blame all the futility on Ovechkin or any of these superstars, they do leave you in disbelief. Not even a conference final? Really? Game 5 between the Celtics and the Wizards was never in doubt. Celtics won by 22. SI NBA writer Rohan Nadkarni is here. One bright spot in that game, Avery Bradley. He's our adrenaline performer. It's presented by Toyota. Let's go places. He erupted for a playoff career high 29 points in just 30 minutes, 4 of 7 from three-point range. Scored 25 in the first 2 quarters. The Celtics, of course, had a 16-point halftime lead. And honestly, Rohan, you didn't really need to watch the rest of the game from there on out. One thing that stands out in this series, the road teams have been so bad. Why?
I think it kind of speaks to the, I wouldn't say immaturity, but just, these are teams that haven't really had these deep playoff runs yet. Washington hasn't been past the second round in many years. Boston hasn't been past the first round with this core. I think it says something about, the growing pains these guys are going through. It's tough to win on the road in the playoffs, and it's especially tough for young teams. I think that's what we're seeing right now. The role players, all these guys, they haven't been in these high-pressure moments yet, and those players tend to play better at home. So I think that's what we're kind of seeing in this series. Both these teams still have a lot of growing up to do, and, that will happen in the future. But right now, that comfort of home, I think that's what's been the most important part of this series.
I just wish, one of them has been close, and that's really it. Of course, Cavaliers and Warriors, they're on a collision course for their 3rd straight finals matchup. Does that perceived inevitability make the playoffs boring?
I don't know if boring's the right word, but there is kind of this air of pointlessness almost, I guess, to what we're doing right now. It just feels like, the Raptors series, I think a lot of us at SI really thought Toronto had a good chance to play well against Cleveland, and you see that it didn't happen. And, Toronto made all these moves at the trade deadline that would lend itself to believe, okay, this is going to be a good series, and it just didn't matter. And I think that's the frustrating part, is that you see all these teams doing their best to compete with Golden State and Cleveland, GMs being aggressive, and it just not mattering at the end. And I think that's the frustrating part. In terms of boring, we still had individual great games. Spurs, Rockets, we're seeing You know, a lot of greatness there and some truly like fantastic individual performances. You know, Isaiah's 53, what John Wall has been doing. So I don't know if boring's the right word, but there's a sense of like, what does it all really mean?
Okay, well, here's Cleveland coach Ty Lue weighing in on whether or not the inevitability of Warriors-Cavs has made this a little less watchable. Let's take a listen.
I think a lot of people wanted to see Boston and Lakers back in the day. So I think nowadays a lot of people want to see Golden State Cavs.
Okay, so is the 80s Lakers Celtics, who also met, let's see, was it 84, 85, 87? Is that a fair comparison to this Cavs Warriors rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not unfair. It is interesting. I think the Warriors, you know, adding Durant, that kind of changes the equation a little bit. It would be kind of shocking if they lost the finals at this point. But I think that's an apt comparison, and I think obviously people look back fondly on the 80s, you know, in terms of those rivalries, you know, the teams going head-to-head, you know, many times in the span of 3 or 4 years. So I do think it's an apt comparison, and, you know, Tyler's on it. I think Kobe also agreed with him that, you know, why would people be bothered with that? I do think it would be great to get a rubber match, right, and just kind of settle it once and for all, you know, who's going to win this trilogy, so to speak. So I do think that the finals can kind of redeem these playoffs if we have a great series. We talked about this a little bit, but if that series is great, then it'll all have been worth it.
Yeah, we won't remember all the blowouts, all the road teams that just couldn't get it done if Warriors and Cavs ends up being a fantastic finals. Of course, it's not as bad as Charles Barkley claiming to be misquoted in his own autobiography. That was an all-timer. But Draymond Green believes the media is twisting his words. After Green said on his podcast Cleveland's opponents weren't playing good basketball, some of the headlines proclaimed, the Green was taking shots at the Cavs and at their opponents. Now, I guess, Rohan, I mean, this is really a chance for us to look ourselves in the mirror as the media. Is Draymond right? Are we twisting his words around for our own benefit?
I think Draymond gets a little bit of a bad rap sometimes. On one hand, he is a notorious trash talker, right? Like, that's what he do. He likes to rile his guys up. I don't know if he was taking a shot at Cleveland as much as he was saying, you know, how come no one can give them a fight? I think it's more of a comment on the Eastern Conference in general. There is something to be said about, you know, these guys have microphones in their faces every single day. They say so many things. And we saw with DeMar DeRozan the other night, you know, he said something along the lines of, you know, if we had LeBron, we would have won too. That was taken out of context a little bit too. People were saying, well, you know, how can you say something like that? It was in the context of a larger quote. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, so I do think that players are getting a little unfair treatment in certain situations. I think what's important, you know, how many people listen to the whole podcast or how many people listen to that full DeMar quote, to be sure that you're putting things in the proper context. And I think Draymond is someone who says so many things that will catch your eye that he doesn't always get the benefit of the full context.
I agree with you that he may not get the benefit of the doubt, but not this time. I think he really meant that. I think he was taking a shot at the Cavaliers' opponents and essentially saying, we have a tougher road to the finals than the Cavaliers do.
Well, factually, he's correct, right? I mean, the Jazz were one of the top teams in the league, frankly. You know, the Raptors, they were a good team, but they played without Lowry. So, I mean, factually, he's not wrong there. So I do think that he was definitely taking a shot at someone. But I just don't know if it was Cleveland or more about what is going on with the Eastern Conference.
He was definitely taking a shot at someone. We have no idea who.
Exactly.
But he was definitely taking a shot. We're not surprised about that, Rohan. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Former NBA All-Star Kenny Anderson likes to say that basketball is easy. It's life that's the hard part, and he would know. Anderson went from New York City high school legend to the Final Four with Georgia Tech to becoming the second overall pick in the draft by the New Jersey Nets to being an all-star. He earned $60 million. But along the way, he fathered 8 children by 5 women, lost all of his money, was arrested for a DUI, visited North Korea with Dennis Rodman, and eventually admitted he had been sexually abused as a child. Anderson's life is the subject of a new documentary called Mr. Chibs. He stopped by our studio.
How would I describe my relationship with basketball? I love it. I love the smell of a gym. That ball made me travel all over the world, meet different people, open so many doors for me. Like I always say, I tell my friends, man, the basketball God's been great for me. Growing up in New York City, a prodigy, you know, at the age of 9 years old, it's like awesome. It gives me goosebumps talking about it. It makes me proud, and they love what I did on the basketball court. Outside of basketball, growing up, you know, with my mother, just coming from a single-parent home, it was tough at times, you know. Most of my family members, alcoholics, drug addicts. This was rough, man. I had basketball. That's all I had, and I knew it could take me to, you know, it could open a lot of different doors for me. And Vincent, my mentor, told me that. Said, if you want to go to college, this is your tool. You can do it. And But, you know, a lot of negativity. You know, I grew up with some people that, you know, was rough, and I could have easily went in their direction. Basketball is easy, life is hard. That's like my slogan for my documentary. It just fits me. You know, all my life, basketball has been easy for me. But then when you retire, life lessons, life experiences, you know, the failed marriages, the 8 kids, the just dealing with depression, dealing with certain things, getting abused. So it's like, wow. There's a lot of emotional moments in my documentary, but getting the DUI was one of the hardest for me. It got me real emotional because I let the kids down. You know, the kids I was coaching. It was tough. And that's the main thing. You know, I just felt bad, like I let the kids down. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. It's real emotional. You know, it was therapy doing my documentary. What's next for Kenny Anderson? Who knows? I know I'm gonna be coaching something. It don't have to be coaching on the basketball floor, but a life coach. But I want to give back to the youth because somebody saved me. My mentor Vincent and Pierre, Jack Curran, they saved me. I think it's my obligation to help kids.
Flyweight champion Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. We're going to do a little something we're calling strike for strike. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to strike you and you're going to strike me back. No, no. I'm going to ask you questions. We're going to start with the jab, and we're going to work up from there. So the questions are going to get increasingly more difficult, all right? So let's start with the jab. That's the setup. You are 1 win away from breaking the record for most UFC title defenses. What has been the biggest challenge during this time?
You know, I would say the biggest challenge during this whole time is staying healthy. That's the biggest one. It's just staying healthy. You know, the motivation, keep on getting better. That's easy stuff because I'm with great coaches, Brad Kurtzen, Matt Hume, and they keep on feeding me different knowledges and making me change, telling me I should change, and that's, you know, bread and butter. But staying healthy is the biggest one.
Okay, let's move over to the sidekick, a little bit more intense than that. Former bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz has said he believes you can move up to bantamweight and that you could take on anyone in that division. Have you ever thought, or do you have any plans on moving up in weight class?
As of right now, I have no plans to move weight classes, just because I've been there already. You know, my natural weight class is 125. At the UFC, you know, we sit down and we negotiate. I'm gonna tell them, you know, I want $1 million up front plus pay-per-view points, and then if they want to do that, then we can start discussing 135.
What do you think they'd say to that?
No.
You gotta start high, right? This is a negotiation.
Well, it's not a it's a negotiation, and I believe that's what I'm worth. It's a super fight. If we're gonna do super fights, it's gonna be super money, right? So that's what I'm gonna say. And if they don't want to, you know, meet those standards, that's totally fine. I'll stay in my weight class to keep on fighting.
Okay, let's go to the roundhouse.
Okay, roundhouse kick.
Before your last title defense, you said you wish the UFC showed more value to champions of the sport. Are they valuing showmanship over skill too much?
Absolutely. And they're running their business. That's their first in mind. But I think, in my personal opinion, I think it should go, no matter what, if you look at the roster, champions should be paid most. And then you can pick the guys who sells tickets, and then you can disperse it down there at all. I mean, me defending the belt for 10 times straight, and a guy who comes into the UFC and makes more of a payout than I do, there's something wrong with the sport.
Have you brought these concerns to Dana White, and if so, what has he said?
I have not brought these concerns. I haven't had to sit down and talk with Dana White. I've only had one. But other than that, if I was to keep it real with Dana in front of the whole world, I don't think it would be a good conversation. But me and Dana, we are in good terms with no bad blood. But if I keep it real, you know what I mean? It's just part of the sport.
But in some ways, and I'm not trying to stir up anything, but is it a sign of disrespect a little bit? Because, you know, you're out here saying, I'm the champ, I should be paid like the champ, and he has no response. He's not showing you any love in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I get paid very well. So I'm not knocking my pay at all. But if a guy who's not even a champion makes more money than me, then you have to scratch your head like, what the hell is going on here? Like, how does that make sense? Is it because ticket sales? Is it because he brings more to the table? So then you're paying for talent. You're not paying for talent. You're paying for, you know, somebody who's going to bring ticket sales. So that's why I did that thing where you can get the girl who said, "Catch me outside" on Dr. Phil. If that's what you're looking for, she'd probably make more money than I would because she'll bring way more eyes to the table. But if I'm going after the audience and the market that they want to see true talent.
Do you feel like the importance of being a UFC champion has diminished?
I think I don't. It depends. You ask. You could say yes, because nowadays it's not as important to be a champion for people because they know they get the big money fights without being a champion. For a good example, my boy Tyron Woodley, he's the welterweight champion of the world, and Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz aren't welterweights, and they got paid higher than the welterweight champion. So that makes you take a look at the sport, like how does that make sense? And that's just facts. That's just not me not talking. That's just facts itself. And you can't argue with facts. And that doesn't make sense.
Okay, let's go to the uppercut. Past weekend, we saw the sport of boxing announce Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez as a mega fight. It's going to happen in September. Being honest, does the UFC have anything lined up for 2017 that would bring more excitement than that fight?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. This fight on Saturday is bringing way more excitement than the Triple G versus Canelo Alvarez. Don't get me wrong, that's a great fight, great matchup. I'm very excited to see it. I got Canelo, by the way.
Okay.
But yeah, we got plenty of matches. I mean, Stephen Miocic taking on JDS is going to be bigger. But yeah, there's a lot of different matches. I mean, even the Conor McGregor versus Mayweather, when Conor comes back and defend his belt, or when Jose Aldo taking on Max Holloway, I'm more excited for that fight than the Conor Mayweather.
Let's go to the Conor Mayweather fight. This is our knockout. We saw the Triple G and Alvarez took the date that presumably was on hold for Mayweather and for McGregor. Does Dana White not want Conor McGregor to fight Mayweather?
No, I think he does. I think he does. I think he wants to do it for Conor. I think if Conor does fight Mayweather, I'm sure he's going to make the biggest purse in his life, and I don't see him coming back fighting mixed martial arts. Not that he doesn't like to or he's afraid to. I think there'd be no point for him. At the end of the day, we put our bodies on the line to make money. You know what I mean? So with that being said, he'll make the biggest payout, and then he'll be like, okay, I'm done. I don't need to fight. I'll pursue other ventures, spend time with my son, my wife, and maybe I might have an itch. But if I'm going to make $50 million to go back and fight in the UFC, and make $1 million, doesn't make sense.
So you think he would walk out of the boxing ring that night and never walk back into an octagon or a boxing ring ever again?
I could see. I mean, I think it's all. I mean, I would say yes. But, who am I to say that he might not? But if I made $50 million, my next fight, it would most likely be my last fight.
Would it be a black eye on the sport of UFC, mixed martial arts rather, if McGregor loses convincingly?
No, it'll be opposite.
Okay, so it's only bad for boxing.
Only bad for boxing. I mean, because in mixed martial arts, the thing that puts us above boxing is that we have all facets of martial arts. To where boxing is boxing. You get beat out of 12 rounds. Good job. You didn't even knock me out. Perfect. In mixed martial arts, you're getting finished, you're getting choked out, you're getting kicked, kneed, elbowed. So a lot more things can happen there.
Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, you've survived strike for strike. You did a fantastic job.
Perfect.
Ain't no thing. Multiple Emmy award-winning journalist, senior correspondent, host, Jeremy Schaap, congratulations, because E60 moving to a new time, Sunday mornings, 9 a.m., really occupying the space of the sports reporters, which your father was the original host. Heartwarming story that you have about Dak Prescott and his late mother, Peggy Prescott. What are sports fans and people in general going to learn about their relationship in this piece?
Well, yeah, we start the first show on Sunday with the Dak Prescott profile. It happens to be Mother's Day, so the story is about Dak and his mother, Peggy. They had a unique relationship, closer than most close mother-son relationships. He really was raised by her, his two older brothers as well, in a small town in Louisiana just outside of Shreveport. He gives her credit for all the successes he's had as a football player. She was at every game when he was growing up. And then when he was a sophomore at Mississippi State, she she became very sick with stage 4 cancer, and she died at the beginning of his sophomore season there. And he's dedicated himself since then to her memory. He's dedicated his successes to her. So that's, that's really the story that we're telling on Mother's Day.
To be able to tell these types of stories amidst a lot of changes at ESPN, what did it mean for you to get the vote of confidence and once things started to really change with the lineup there?
Well, we're thrilled that we're getting this opportunity. E60's been on for a decade. So it's an unusual situation to have a show that's already been on TV for 10 years. So now, to be doing the show 52 weeks a year in the same time slot, 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings, represents a big commitment to the show, to this kind of storytelling, to this kind of journalism. It's expensive to do this kind of reporting. The other big piece in the first show is an incredible piece reported by Steve Faineru and reported by Greg Amante and produced by Greg Amante, a terrific producer, about the Syrian national soccer team and that complicated situation. They went all over the world reporting this story over the course of the last year, really. And there's going to be more of that. I mean, we're probably going to be doing 3 or 4 times as many stories per year now that we're on every week.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm not sure if people understand just how expensive it is to do investigative reporting. Were you concerned at all when the layoffs started happening and things were shaken up that perhaps E60 would not exist because these stories are not easily told?
Well, we announced back in January that the show was going weekly. But of course, there are financial pressures, and this is expensive TV to produce. The hope is that in some way it pays for itself, viewer interest, prestige, and that we're bringing enough people, that we're bringing a lot of people into the ESPN tent who want to see this kind of programming and this kind of work. But it does represent a major investment, a major commitment of resources and creative energy and time and all of those things. So to have that vote of confidence means a lot to the people working on the show.
And I think no matter how people's tastes change, I think people still appreciate great storytelling. We're also in an age where we feel like we know more about our athletes than ever before because of social media. In some ways, has that either made your job more difficult or perhaps more interesting when an athlete can talk directly to the audience?
The social media phenomenon, it really has had an incredible impact on the industry, just from the perspective of athletes using social media to communicate their own messages, to disseminate whatever news they want disseminated about their lives and their careers. But what we have found in the course of the last decade on E60, and I've been in ESPN for 24 years, it's not a substitute for somebody going out and doing a profile, doing a newsmaking interview. That's good news for us because they're still interested in having their stories told that way. There is still that kind of symbiotic relationship between the athletes and the press, despite the social media component, which you could say, it makes us superfluous in some ways.
Jeremy Schaap, congratulations. E60 moves to Sundays at 9 a.m. And the story about Dak Prescott, his relationship with his late mother, Peggy, running on Mother's Day. There will not be a dry eye in the house, I am sure.
Thank you, Meg.
And that will do it for SI Now. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow to close out the week at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. But until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. See you tomorrow.